With every pair of hands, you get a free brain. Well, that's the promise of high involvement innovation, HII, engaging everyone in the organization in the innovation mission. And it's got a lot to offer. Take the case of Denny's shipyard in Dumbarton, Scotland. They introduced a simple HII scheme to encourage anyone in their 350-strong workforce to make suggestions on how they could improve the company's performance. Within their first year, they'd managed to cut the time to build a warship from 6 months to 4, while also improving quality, adding new features, and reducing waste. Impressive stuff, but also a reminder that HII isn't new. That particular story comes from 1871. Nor is theirs an isolated case. Organized high-involvement innovation was happening at least 100 years before that. The 8th shogun of Japan, Yoshimune Tokugawa, tried it out in 1721 with his Meia-Subako, which was a box placed at the entrance of the Edo castle for written suggestions from his subjects. And the British Navy pioneered a similar scheme in 1770, asking its sailors and marines for their ideas, significantly reassuring them that such suggestions would not carry the risk of punishment. From pioneering efforts like John Patterson's attempt to harness what he called the 100-headed brain in the National Cash Register Company back in 1892, which was eagerly imitated by the Eastman Kodak Company in 1896, right through to Toyota's famous Kaizen commitment in the 1970s, which mobilized over 50 million suggestions and helped put them at the forefront of productivity performance in the global car industry. Now, the evidence is clear. High involvement innovation works. Building on ideas from across the organization can contribute significant competitive advantage and deliver multi-million-dollar savings. As companies as diverse as ConocoPhillips, Liberty Global, Fujitsu, or Nokia continue to attest. Now, right now, there's a great deal of emphasis on looking outside for innovation, the world of open innovation, in which not all the smart guys work for us. That's recognized, and it's driving a search to find those smart people out there with whom we could connect. And while this is undoubtedly a rich source of inspiration, we perhaps shouldn't forget the internal world of employees and their ideas. It's one of the paradoxes of modern management that we have the key resource of creativity fitted as standard equipment in every person we employ. And yet, many organizations fail to manage, recognize, or tap into this. One of the fathers of the modern quality management thinking movement, Joseph Juran, used to call this the gold in the mine. Our challenge is finding up-to-date and effective ways to extract this mineral. But it's not a magic trick. These results only emerge from an organizational culture which makes contributing to innovation a key part of the way we do things around here. It's not a one-off initiative, it's a pattern of behavior which has become reinforced to the point that it's a routine. Like professional dancers who've learned and rehearsed their intricate steps to the point where they don't think about it, they just dance. Now, if we want the benefits that high involvement innovation clearly has to offer, we need to understand just what behaviors we're talking about and how they might move from being unfamiliar, faltering new steps to becoming embedded routines. Well, way back in the mists of time, the late 1990s to be precise, we began some research on organizations trying to understand this question. Working with a wide range of organizations, large and small, manufacturing, services, not-for-profit, public sector, and a pattern began to emerge. Although what they all shared was a desire to embed high-involvement innovation in their organizations, the real challenge was in changing the culture. introducing and then reinforcing these new ways of behaving. It involved a journey where progress wasn't measured in terms of time or money invested, but how well the organization learned and mastered key behaviors. Now, it's worth looking a little more closely at what each of these stages in evolving maturity looks like, and the challenges posed in moving up the staircase to the next level of capability. Now, level 1, the starting place, might be described as getting the innovation habit. Organizations at this level are often newcomers to the idea, playing around with it and exploring before fully committing themselves. Their activities typically involve small-scale pilots, and their impact, of course, is then going to be limited, picking some low-hanging fruit, but not really engaging with the big challenges. Support and sponsorship for the approach is often limited and of a temporary nature. There's little or no long-term commitment from the top. The big risk in this is that early users will be turned off because nothing seems to happen with their ideas. It's just been another of those interesting initiatives which go nowhere. There's little or no training provided, so most learning comes about by doing, and at best facilitation and support is provided by someone inside the organization, often doing it on a part-time basis, or else from external consultants doing it on a very temporary basis. The focus tends to be on local level issues with little cross-functional or interdisciplinary activity. Knowledge management is rudimentary, perhaps a simple spreadsheet on which to record ideas coming into the system. And there's little in the way of a reward or recognition system, nothing much in the way of keeping the motivation going. Now, contrast that to the next level up the staircase, level 2. Here, the organization is being much more systematic in approach. It's taking high involvement innovation seriously, and it's made the decision to invest, not just in some kind of enabling platform, but in providing facilitation, encouraging people to participate. This isn't just an initial wave of enthusiasm. People are joining in with their ideas, but also with comments, refinements, improvements. It's becoming a collaborative innovation activity. There's an idea management system in place to enable ideas to move from initial suggestion through refinement, improvement, to downstream implementation, and different pathways for that implementation. Have been identified. And there's much more evidence of support from senior leadership in terms both of commitment of resources and active sponsorship for the program. This still might take the form, though, of an overall umbrella of support rather than directly linking to the line or operating structure in the organization. And those targets for ideas are still mostly bottom-up suggestions. There's little in the way of linkage to the strategic goals of the organization. Some consideration has gone into the motivation question. There's perhaps some form of reward and recognition coming back to people in return for their engagement. Training's provided to help people learn to use the platform and develop their skills and understanding around innovation. Knowledge management on a more organized basis now, but still mostly around capturing and storing information. For example, better recording of suggested ideas. By the time we get to level 3, we're bringing in the strategic dimension, hooking up that innovation engine bottom up, which has been built up in level 2, and now driving it in a particular strategic direction. Campaigns are clearly identified and explained, sponsored from a high enough level to communicate that this is an important direction for the organization to move in. And there's a clear owner interested in the innovations which emerge because they'll help move the organization forwards. With clear targets comes the possibility of measuring progress against those strategic objectives. Now that's something which helps justify the costs in terms of time and other resources, the costs which are invested in high involvement innovation by the organization. And by their nature, many of those campaigns cut across organizational boundaries. So the platform increasingly engages people from different parts of the organization. There might even be scope for working with external players, like suppliers or customers in key strategic campaigns. At this level, the underlying structure for high involvement is in place and working well. There's extensive facilitation, perhaps involving more than one person working full-time to review and improve the system and develop it further. Participation rates are high, appropriate to the nature of the challenge, and participation is spreading out across the organization. People are regularly involved in the full spectrum of activity on the platform, from suggesting ideas through comment and refinement, judgment, and helping focus and support implementation of the strongest ideas. In particular, the selection, the judgment phase now has clear criteria against which to assess ideas, and many people can help bring the wisdom of the crowd to this process. People are experienced in using the platform, and they continue to be trained in innovation-related skills. In particular, the organization has a growing library of tools and techniques available to support the innovation process, and the role of facilitators has moved to include a core training, coaching, and development role. Knowledge isn't now just being created and stored in the form of ideas, it's being recombined and redeployed. Key lessons from one area becoming available for others to use. As a result, there's less reinvention of the wheel, more sharing of good ideas and practices. Now, level 4 builds on this, but it also starts to provide an environment in which bigger ideas can be explored alongside the steady stream of campaign-focused improvement innovations. Participation is now at a high level, broadly spread across the organization, and people are engaged in ideation, judgment, and implementation. But in addition, there's now encouragement of highly committed internal entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs. Typically, teams of people form around major projects and work offline to develop them further, to create detailed business cases and models. And to support this, there's extensive training and skills development in key areas such as business model and business planning, project management and financing, plus allowance of time and other resources to the team to support their efforts. People by this time are learning to use the innovation process autonomously, enacting entrepreneurship inside the organization. The nature of both campaigns and team-driven entrepreneurial ideas increasingly moves the organization towards cross-functional engagement, linking up across various boundaries and to outside organizations. And when those ideas from entrepreneurial internal teams have matured, they can be presented, pitched to senior management for possible further development and adoption within the organization's larger innovation portfolio. Which is great, but it places a challenge on senior management, not only now to provide support and encouragement, but also to commit to seeing ideas that fit their need through. Just like the role of sponsors as owners in the campaign-led route, this stage certainly requires active leadership. Knowledge management at this level operates in sophisticated fashion, not only capturing and storing ideas in a knowledge warehouse, but also actively searching and using the knowledge to support a wide range of projects. In particular, it allows for recombination, redeployment across different areas. The role of supporting and enabling this becomes one of significance. Organizations begin to think about becoming knowledge curators as a key activity. Well, at the top of the staircase, level 5 involves the strategic use of high involvement capability, spreading it widely. It's about building and growing innovation communities with clients, with the external crowd, with suppliers, as well as inside. In a sense, the organization becomes increasingly borderless, boundaryless, operating several parallel innovation activities with these communities, but ensuring they remain aligned and focused. There's extensive use of online functionality in sophisticated software platforms, but a growing parallel offline organization of active entrepreneurial groups. Knowledge management here becomes central to the organization, harvesting, processing, redeploying a wide range of knowledge assets and engaging increasingly in open innovation fashion with a wide range of players and stakeholders. The platform becomes the intelligent infrastructure on which a community of sharing co-creators are operating, a learning organization. So, how do we climb this staircase? How do we build a high involvement innovation culture? Well, cultures don't just happen. They're built up in a hierarchical way. At the base, we've got individual values and beliefs, the things that matter to us and shape the way we think about the world. We share these with others and arrive at some common views, norms, which shape how we behave alongside each other in our organizations. Now, over time, these patterns of behavior are rehearsed and repeated to that point where we no longer consciously think about them. They've become hardwired into our organization's processes and procedures, its rules and structures, their routines. So what are the underlying values and beliefs that we need to build? Our research identified 10 key building blocks, and they're as relevant today as they were back when we first started the research. In a high involvement culture, we'd expect to find good evidence that reflects beliefs like, number one, ideas matter from everyone. Everyone is capable of contributing to the innovation mission. 2, high involvement needs a core enabling process. It's not about a sudden flash of inspiration, but providing a systematic process for listening to, sharing, and taking good ideas forward, and allowing the time and space for that to operate. 3, ideas aren't the problem. Enabling them to create value is the key. So we need an idea management system which gives recognition and feedback to people who suggested them, but also provides clear ways, clear routes to take them forward. Number 4, people can learn how to innovate. Innovators are made, not born, but they need support in the form of training and development, tools and techniques, generally scaffolding to help them become more effective innovators. 5, leadership matters. People who believe the innovation story and enable the narrative of high involvement, providing guidance, direction, and support. 6, ideas have real impact when they're strategically directed. High involvement innovation works when the bottom-up capability of suggestions meets the top-down clear direction about where and why improvements and innovations matter. Number 7, all of this needs a supporting structure, facilitation, coaching, training, and this structure needs continuous review and development, updating it to provide the scaffolding for the future. Number 8, knowledge lies at the heart of innovation, and people are the key carriers of it. Which leads obviously to number 9, knowledge is distributed across the organization. So high involvement innovation needs to enable inclusiveness, openness, free flow of knowledge across organizational boundaries. And last but not least, motivation matters. People need an incentive to share their ideas. And this is less about money than about recognition, feeling listened to, empowered, enabled to contribute. Now, no organization starts with a fully developed version of high involvement innovation. As we've seen, it's a learning journey, building and reinforcing capability. Climbing that staircase towards maturity involves confronting a host of challenges. For example, how do you reach and engage your workforce in something they may not see as being part of their job? How do you do so at scale and across a workforce which might often be widely distributed geographically? How do you replicate across the organization that sense of shared goals and shared ideas, which is the focus of high-performing teams? How can you handle large volumes of ideas and move them from being ideas through to implementation and have an impact? How do you ensure the focus is on innovation trajectories which really make a difference? How do you maintain momentum after the initial enthusiasm wears off? So, where do we start? Well, the good news is that we now have some very powerful new enabling technologies and a wealth of shared experience on which to draw to help us build that kind of culture. We've come a long way from the simple days of the suggestion box. But high involvement innovation still won't happen simply by waving the magic wand and pronouncing the high involvement spell. The conclusions from our research are simple. Organizations need to work on 4 key things. First of all, articulate what we want to see. What do we want to see people doing? What do we want to hear them saying as they go about their work? What stories do they tell about success or of failure in the innovation world? And what behaviors underpin that? Once we've identified which behaviors we want, enable them. Put in place mechanisms that help people learn and practice those behaviors. This might involve training them in specific skills like problem finding and solving or using design thinking methods. It might include providing structures to support and guide the behaviors, the policies and procedures to follow. It might well involve creating an enabling platform, for example, a software collaboration platform, to provide a way to share and build on ideas, collecting and deploying them. And once this is happening, reinforce them. If these behaviors are going to become the way we do things around here, then we need to constantly reinforce them through feedback, rewards, and incentives. For example, celebrate innovation achievements, recognize teams and individuals who make a contribution. Above all, make sure that people who take risks or move outside the expected don't get punished or blamed if they fail. And lastly, review, reflect, and pivot. For a resilient high involvement culture, we need the capacity to review and adapt. It's a learning journey, a continuous process of adapting, adjusting, and occasionally a major reset, climbing the ladder to high involvement maturity.